Welcome to Grounding Ascension, where we explore topics around activating and integrating our I am presence, coming back to our true selves. I am your host, Celeste Glus. Welcome back, my friends. Today we are talking about choosing the path of love. So this is a follow-up episode on the last one about walking the path of love. So if you missed that one, definitely take a little time and go back and listen in. But today I'm going to be talking about choosing the path of love. What does it look like? Tips on walking this oh so divine and courageous path of love. What does it mean to walk this path? Just a little recap from last episode. It's walking the path of magical unfolding of the divine in your life. It's just really what it is. When we can reclaim the true frequency of love within, we begin to reclaim the magic that has been lost in our reality. And sometimes when you hear the word magic, it sounds airy-fairy, it sounds like it's some out there concept, but this is a teaching that comes from ancient cultures, many ancient cultures. I'm specifically right now reading a book from the Navajo and the Tibetan ancient cultures, and this is so natural to them. Understanding and living the true frequency of love. Like, it wasn't something that they had to believe in. It was actually something that was inherent in their language, in their way of being. And this is what I genuinely believe we are now reclaiming as a humanity, activating the heart in such deeper realms, in such deep ways that I haven't seen or experienced ever in my life. I'm seeing how if we choose to walk this path, we are being given the opportunity to quite literally release patterns and behaviors that have been so dense in all of humanity. It's like what I see is like the templates of this human story are being rewritten within our own hearts. And we have the capacity to choose that or not. We can definitely choose to keep living our old ways, or we can choose to begin to walk this magical unfolding of the infinite potential that lies within each and every single one of us. So there's definitely a type of true knowing that happens inside of you when you choose to walk this path. Now, it's not like you're going to wake up every day and just feel completely, sky high about it, because it's hard, right? I've said this so many times and I'm just going to repeat it because sometimes I think walking this path or being around so many spiritual concepts, people just think it's so easy. And on the contrary, I would have to argue that it's much harder to walk this path than it is to simply be blind and to look the other way. And much of that has been done really on purpose. There are forces at play that don't really want us to activate this true frequency of love within, that don't really want us to see this possibility of walking this path of love. And this knowing of this path has been stripped away from humanity from the beginning of time. And to be quite honest, to see the true frequency of love is probably one of the rarest things that you can find on earth. Really, it's hard, it's very rare to find somebody who holds this true frequency of love. I have been exposed to it through deep meditative journeying, through very specific points in time, like very specific moments that my heart has been just blasted open, but it's very hard to hold this frequency and to walk this path. I was thinking about where could you actually see it? Most couples are a good platform, it's a good foundation to start exploring this work. But it's very rare to see this amongst couples, even amongst parents and children. It's very rare to see the true frequency of love, because it's not that people don't do it because they do it because they have bad intentions. No, not at all. It's just because they're blinded by their own programming and by our own belief systems, by our own subconscious patterns that we can't even see. So it's not to point the finger and say, humanity's not doing good enough. It's just we're at that point where we get to choose if we want to peel back the layers, to peel back the veils of what love can be. And I have found that divine union, the power of relationship, is a huge platform for this. This is one of my personal paths, walking the path of the rose and walking the path of divine union. That is the teacher of this path, of choosing the path of love. And so the divine feminine is rising. The teachings of the rose are being awakened within us. And as she rises, she is bringing forth with her the true potential of love. She's opening up this path for us to walk it. For those of us who have the courage and the strength to say, yes, bring it on. I'm ready. I'm ready to walk this path. And it's humbling. And yet at the same time, at some point, I genuinely believe we all have to do this work. At some point, maybe in this life, maybe in another life, we will all have to make a choice of whether we want to do this good work, surrender to something higher, and have a platform from which to be taught. Perhaps it's a relationship, perhaps it's simply the way we treat ourselves, the relationship with ourselves. The platform can take shape in so many different ways. So I'm actually curious if you can just take a moment to see what would be the platform in your life for you to walk this path. What would be the platform that provided you with the most amount of possibility and opportunity to rewrite your programs, your subconscious patterns, your belief systems? Normally, if you are in relationship, that is definitely the first path to open up. And so again, it's not an easy path, right? It's quite difficult, to say the least, because it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of willingness to show up moment by moment. And like I explained in the last episode, it takes a lot of belief that something new is possible in the name of love. But, think about it this way. And I love fitness. I've been teaching it forever. And I move every day for the purpose of just moving because it's healthy for us, right? But if you want to work out a specific muscle, let's say you're trying to grow your bicep. Do you just simply show up for that bicep one day a week at the gym? No, you're going to cater your workout to a very specific outcome so that you make sure that you're showing up to that muscle that you want to grow. And then outside of the gym, you're going to make sure that you're eating correctly for that muscle to grow. And while you're sleeping, you're going to make sure that you sleep correctly, right? If you're really into into committing yourself to growing this muscle, right? You change your life around to make sure that this muscle grows. And it's the same thing with walking this path. You change the way that you navigate your path because you know that there is something new happening. And this just goes hands in hand with ascension and the spiritual awakening. You know that there is something happening. And I genuinely believe that most people that are choosing their ascension process, in some way or another, they are choosing a path of love. At some point, that ascension process has to lead you on the path of love. And truly, this is ascension, walking this path of love. coming back to true love. That is activation of the light body. Understanding that we are so much more than the physical. And that potential that we have within us is constantly expanding. It is ever growing. If you've ever had the opportunity to travel to the unseen and to see and feel the expansiveness of the universe, it's humbling. And that's what we're growing into. And the only way to do that is through the heart. It's like the biggest doorway. It's our key to ascension. And this is why I've decided to spend so much time on speaking on love and the path of love and choosing it and walking it, because it's the key to our ascension process. It's the key to our spiritual awakening. And we don't have the proper language and the words to talk about it. It's a little frustrating because I have to repeat the word love, and yet what you receive is what you define as love to be. So basically, when we choose to do this work, we are met with opportunities. And we need to have specific tools to expand our heart frequency, to expand the potential of our heart. Because if not, it can get really messy and really tough, right? So what happens, first of all, when you are confronted with this true frequency of love? Like, what might this look like in your life? Well, I can tell you that for me, in real time, in real life, my body will completely bug out. And this will happen in a deep felt conversation, or in a moment where I understand that how I meet this following circumstance, person, conversation, situation, how I choose to move forward with it will quite literally change the magnetic field of my heart. And that's first and foremost requiring immense amount of stillness within your body. So if you can create stillness within you and notice that there's a very specific moment happening, two very specific moments that I have found is a time of being triggered and a time of being deeply moved within the frequency of love, meaning you are deeply held or experiencing higher levels of love. And so your body will bug out because it's not used to it. It's literally like a computer that, you know how sometimes if your computer has too many tabs open, or you're requiring it to be working extra time, like overload on a specific day because you have all these things happening, sometimes the computer will freeze and it'll bug out a little bit. That's exactly what happens to the energetic field. That's exactly what happens to the heart field. It actually begins to quiver and shake, and it spasms a little bit because it's not used to this more expanded potential. And what I notice is my vision will change a little bit. Sometimes it'll go a little blurry. My heartbeat will either speed up dramatically or completely slow down so much that I can barely catch myself breathing. The blood pressure in your body will completely drop. Like, you'll feel it. You might feel chills. The temperature in your body will change. It's pretty physical. It's a pretty physical experience when you start to feel that the frequency of love is shifting your entire programming. And what I find is that oftentimes you're just led back to stillness because there's just so much happening. There's so much rewiring happening within your own body, within your own heart field, that you may just want to stay still. Now, the other opposite part of that is that you may want to simply bug out. And that's normal too. Like, that's a common reaction, to lash out, for the body to come back to its old programs and perhaps reach for self-sabotage mechanisms, right? Which That could look like anything. You could reach for food, social media, TV, you name it these days. Anything could be a form of self-sabotage. So you might have those two things. And that's why I say an immense amount of stillness is required in this process, because if you're not still enough, your body will naturally come back to its old habits, and you will close off completely to this new potential of love. So if the mind takes over in this moment of true potential of expansion and transformation, then yes, you will come back into your programming and you'll snap out of the potential of that moment. But this is why mindfulness and meditation and awareness and presence is so important, right? This is why I created that free mindful challenge. You can sign up for that on my website, because it's what we need more and more and more as we walk deeper into this path, as we walk deeper in the ascension process and expand further into spiritual awakening. So as I mentioned before, two big avenues for choosing this path of love, which happens moment by moment, by the way. So just because you choose it once, it doesn't mean that you're just like forever the disciple of the path of love, right? It's moment by moment. And so two very specific moments that are big initiations, time after time, is a time of being triggered when you know that you can easily lash out at somebody, or it would feel and it would be so good to just go back to your old programming, to just hide behind your old self, to just reach for that old thing that you used to reach for that gives you instant pleasure and satisfaction. Whether that's self-sabotage, whether that's pointing the finger in blame or guilt, whatever it is. And then the second one is, like I mentioned before, those moments of deep felt love. The only time that I have felt this is being held by my partner in true love, being seen from his heart, and also in very deep states of meditation. And so maybe you have other avenues for you that would open up these experiences, but that's what I have found to be the most common platforms of initiation, moment to moment, for me in this path of choosing the path of love. Because that's the thing, right? Once you decide, yes, I'm going to walk this path, now you've opened the door for these opportunities to come. Now the opportunities to be triggered will come like a waterfall on a stormy day. And if you live in Hawaii, you know that when it rains a lot, those are the times to look for waterfalls. It's like, that's when you know, when the opportunities continue to arise time after time, that's the path of love opening up to you, speaking to you, asking you to choose it over and over and over and over again. It's like an old relationship, a destined relationship that is trying to be seen, and it will make itself be seen through triggering moments, through times of deep felt love, and maybe through very deep meditation. And all of these experiences, they begin to rewire our heart, like I was saying before. So our heart field begins to expand ridiculously. Quite literally, the field of the heart, the energy pattern, begins to rebundle and reshape itself. This is one of the things that we practice so much on with Sunday Unity meditations. When we come together and we rewrite our energetic patterns, we train our energy bodies to align to a different outcome, to a different frequency. Because like I had said before, right? If we want to train our bicep, we change our life around to train that bicep. So if we want to train our muscle, which is by far the most intelligent muscle of our body, the most powerful energetic field of our body, then you better believe that you got to change your life around to walk this path. You better believe it if you are being given this amount of power. It's only right. It's only fair. So let's talk about tips on walking this path of love, because goodness sakes, do we need so much guidance on this path of love. Oh, dear love. Okay, so I mentioned before, you need presence constantly. Coming back to presence, coming back to stillness time and time and time again. And the more you can practice that on a moment to moment basis, meaning, can you be present while brushing your teeth? Can you be present while sitting in traffic? Those are the times where you can actually take most advantage and train your body to hold the frequency of presence, so that when you are in those moments of initiations, which, like I mentioned before, it's the moment of being triggered, or the moment of being seen by your beloved, or being in very deep, deep moments of true love, or maybe in deep moments of meditation, you can actually hold this frequency of presence, because it's hard, right? Your body does want to bug out. It doesn't want to hold this new thing. So you have to train your field to hold the frequency of presence. And that is really hard when you're being triggered, right? That's really hard when you're mad. So what's the best thing to do? You can practice it when you're not triggered. You can practice it in your moment to moment life. Another tip is to expand into this heart field, is to have random acts of kindness. And I'm finding that this is becoming a lot more powerful, specifically with everything that's going on in the world stage. It is so rare these days for people to trust, to be able to look into another human being's eyes. I mean, when you look around, people are trying to avoid other people because there's so much fear in the air. But what if, for example, you go into the grocery store and you look at the cashier in their eyes and you say hi, and you genuinely mean hi. You don't just go into this thing that we do, hi, thanks, bye. No, like, hi. And you would be surprised at how something so simple can profoundly change this person that is just doing the same thing for hours and hours and hours on end. And that can be a profound random act of kindness, right? There are a bazillion examples of that. Another one that I like to practice constantly is washing the dishes. What a great opportunity to practice a random act of kindness towards myself. Right? And that's like a huge key right there. It's like, can you practice more often than not random acts of kindness to yourself? Sometimes it's so much easier to provide kindness to others. So when you're washing the dishes, instead of allowing your mind to take over and think about all the things that you have to do or did or X, Y, and Z, or get mad because you have to do dishes, what if you just dropped into your heart while you're washing your dishes? And you gave thanks to even having dishes. You gave thanks for running water. You gave thanks for your soap. Maybe you're using organic soap. What a commodity, right? There's so many things to give kindness and gratitude towards. I love to remind myself while I'm washing the dishes that this is just a representation of me walking the path of love and scrubbing my own soul. And if there's something there that doesn't really look good, I have to put some energy into it. And I'm going to practice that by washing the dishes. That can be a profound act of self-kindness. Try it, and please email me or please let me know how that goes. I would love to hear from you. Please. Okay, the next tip. Shifting our mental patterns away from self-sabotage and looping mechanisms into self-love and conscious awareness. This sort of goes back to the first tip of being present. But it also brings in what I just mentioned about random acts of kindness specifically to yourself. So if you could merge those two tips into one, it would be literally shifting our mental patterns away from self-sabotage and looping mechanisms into self-love and conscious awareness. Looping mechanisms, if you haven't heard of that term before, it's quite extraordinary. It's when we catch ourselves repeating the same story, the same thought, the same belief system, normally about ourselves or those around us. We become stuck in this looping pattern, and we just listen to ourselves repeat it. That is a lower level force latching onto your energy system, taking you away from the path of love. So what can you do? You practice kindness towards yourself. You bring yourself into the present moment and you ask yourself, how can I shift this right now? And then just notice what happens. Does your mind just automatically go berserk because you have no idea what to think about? And then now you're in the vast ocean of stillness and you freak the fuck out. So you're like, whoa, I can't be still. That's way harder. That's the path of love. So just notice when you're in self-sabotage or when you're in a looping mechanism with yourself or with another. And if you can shift into self-love and bring conscious awareness to that. And then the last one is I have two more. Practicing heart coherence. And I've talked about that before, about the Heart Math Institute, but really learning to breathe into your heart field and commanding your heart field to expand. You could do this through visualization. You could do this through physically pushing your heart field outward so it expands, it takes up more space. And feel into what actually happens. It's bizarre. I sometimes do this again on the Sunday Unity Meditations on Instagram because it's such a powerful tool. And this is how you expand your potential to experience love in a very practical way, right? Through visualization, through heart coherence, through meditation. Because really in meditation, what you're doing is you're training your body to hold a certain frequency so that when you open your eyes and walk through the world, you can hold that frequency. Meditation is not a separate act from the day. Meditation is what anchors you into a very specific frequency to then be able to hold that frequency throughout. It's just like going to the gym and working out your bicep. Except you're training your energy field. Right? This is what this ascension process is about. And so to choose the path of love requires us to constantly come back to our energy field and work it out. Work it. And then the last tip on walking this path is, can you constantly come back to following your pleasure? Following true pleasure. And that could be like a whole episode on itself, because pleasure has been completely distorted in our reality and it's been used against us by the lower forces, and we are completely blinded to what true pleasure is. When we reach for things in the external world and we believe that we're going to receive pleasure from them, we've been caught in a trap. But to get to know what pleasure looks like for you, true higher level form of pleasure, sustainable forms of pleasure that do not wreak your energy field, that don't pull your energy force, your chi force. These paths of pleasure will guide you into more enhanced sensations of love. And you'll know if your pleasure is sustainable because it won't be anchored into pain. So I want you to get curious about that in your life. How do you see pleasure and where do you receive that from? I speak tremendously deep into that in the Woman Wisdom Mentorship Program, because pleasure is a huge part of the Rose Path and a huge part of the path of love. Pleasure and love hold kind of similar frequencies. And I'll leave you with a last story of how I was presented to this path of love. And I leave it to the end because I don't like to start so much with me in these episodes. But my very initial experiences of spiritual awakening was being shown how we as a humanity have been stripped away from love. And when I say shown, not only was I shown through visuals, I was physically shown. I was put into a state through meditative journeying where I had to feel, and I'm put back into that state from time to time when there are deep transformational patterns that are happening in the collective. But I am put into a state of deep, excruciating, moving pain, physical pain. It's not something that it's very pleasant at all. It's not pleasurable at all. And you would think it's the furthest thing from the path of love. And yet I have been taught love through suffering time and time and time again. To experience the suffering of the collective, to experience the suffering of a human being stripped away from love, I believe is one of the most painful experiences that you can live. And I was constantly shown this quite repetitively for a long time. Now it's not so often. As we as a collective begin to anchor in this true frequency of love, I believe we're coming closer to it. So thankfully on my end, I don't have to be in these states of excruciating pain, but that's what I was taught from the very beginning is what has happened to humanity, the pain that has been encountered from being stripped away from the true path of love is mind-blowing. It's hard to sustain that pain. And this is why we see so much pain in the world. This is why we see so much destruction in the world. Because it's hard to hold on to that pain, so I get it. But we have a choice. And that choice is to choose this path of love. So I ask you, are you willing to choose this path? Are you open to experiencing something outside of what you have been taught? Are you courageous enough and willing to build the discipline and the strength needed to walk this true path of love? And I will leave you with those questions. And the last quote for today's episode: an expanded, aware, consciously active heart field is truly a sight to see. and even better, an experience to be had. Blessings.